I'm Clara Whitman, 34, and I built a quiet, steady life from the ground up. Nothing flashy, just hard work and showing up when it mattered. For years I supported my dad, helped raise my stepsister, and poured nearly every bonus I earned into the home we all shared. But when they handed every single one of my Christmas gifts to Kayla, including a necklace I'd custom made, without a second thought, I realized something had to change. Ever felt invisible in your own family? Like everything you gave was expected, but never valued? If that hits close to home, share your story in the comments. Trust me, you're not the only one. Before I walk you through what really happened, drop where you're watching from. And if you've ever had to reclaim your space, your voice, or your dignity after being dismissed, go ahead and hit like and subscribe. What happened after that holiday morning? You might not see coming. I was 8 when my mother died. It was sudden. A car accident on her way back from the grocery store. One of those moments you don't really understand until years later, when you wake up on a Tuesday and realize no one's ever coming to tuck you in again. After the funeral, people drifted away fast. Neighbors stopped calling. Church friends dropped off casseroles for a week and then vanished. It was just me and Dad after that. He didn't say much about it. I don't remember him crying. He just kept moving. He'd leave early for work, come home late, and sometimes fall asleep in the living room with the TV on, and his shoes still on his feet. I learned pretty quickly not to ask for much. I did the laundry, helped with dinner, kept my grades up. He'd pat my head or say, "Good girl," when he noticed. That was enough. When I turned 16, I got a part-time job at the library downtown. It wasn't glamorous, but it gave me something to do. I saved most of my paycheck. But I started helping out with the electric bill and groceries when I could. Dad didn't ask for it, but I saw the unopened envelopes piling up on the counter. I figured we were a team. That's what families do, right? I stayed local for college, commuted from home to save money, graduated with honors. I had offers to move, to start over somewhere bigger, but I didn't take them. Dad's job had downsized during my sophomore year, and he was drowning in debt from a failed small business loan. So I moved back in full-time and started working for a logistics firm just outside town. Nothing fancy, but it paid well. I made spreadsheets, handled procurement, trained new hires. It was steady, boring maybe, but secure. When I got my first end-of-year bonus, I used it to pay off 2 of Dad's credit cards. He didn't say thank you. He just nodded and said, "Good timing." One of them was about to go to collections. The next year, I paid for a new water heater, then a roof repair, then the taxes. By the time I was 27, I'd put close to 80,000 into the house. My name was added to the deed. Dad said it was for legal reasons, but I didn't care. I wasn't going anywhere. Then came Denise. He met her at a community fundraiser. She was volunteering at the dessert table, and he was dropping off checks from a local sponsor. I still remember the first time he mentioned her. He said, "She reminds me of your mom," which didn't make much sense to me. My mom was quiet, thoughtful, never tried to be the center of attention. Denise wore bright lipstick, talked loud, and laughed even louder. But Dad liked her. That was enough. They married less than a year later. Small ceremony in the backyard. I was maid of honor. I wore a lavender dress that Denise picked out. It didn't really suit me, but she insisted. Said it would bring out my eyes. I remember standing beside her during the vows and wondering how long it would last. Not because I didn't want it to work, but because it already felt like I didn't belong in the picture. A few weeks after the honeymoon, Denise and her daughter Kayla moved in. Kayla was 15 at the time. Moody, impatient, always on her phone. She didn't say much to me the first few weeks. She mostly rolled her eyes or shut her bedroom door. I tried to connect, offered to take her to the bookstore, got her gift cards for makeup, helped her with a math project, but nothing really stuck. Denise told me not to take it personally. She's just adjusting, she said. You'll be like sisters soon. We never were. Kayla had a way of taking up space without even trying. She'd leave dishes in the sink, blast music late at night, take food I bought without asking. Denise always defended her. She's still learning, she'd say. She's been through a lot. I didn't argue, I just picked up the slack. Cleaned up after her, paid extra when the grocery bills jumped, replaced the blender when she broke it trying to make frozen cocktails during spring break. That year, Kayla wanted to go on a school trip to Europe. It was expensive, almost $4,000 all in. Denise cried when she saw the invoice. Dad said they'd figure something out. I paid for it. Quietly. No big announcement. Just wrote the check, sent it with the permission slip, and went back to work. Dad pulled me aside one night and said, "That was good of you. You're really setting a strong example." I took it as a compliment at the time. Now I'm not so sure. When Kayla's laptop crashed the week before midterms, I bought her a new one. When she turned 17, I organized a surprise party, paid for the cake, and decorated the backyard myself. Denise told everyone, "We're just so lucky to have such a generous daughter in the family." I smiled through it. I always did. Every bonus I got went toward the house or something they needed. I updated the plumbing, paid for pest control, covered a deductible when Dad slipped and had to get knee surgery. I even loaned Denise money when her car broke down. I never kept score. I never thought I needed to. I had this idea that being useful meant being wanted, that if I showed up enough, gave enough, filled every gap they had, they'd see me as indispensable. But instead, I became invisible. Or worse, expected, not appreciated, just assumed. The last normal day I remember was about a week before that Christmas. I was sitting at the kitchen table wrapping gifts. I'd bought something for everyone. Denise liked spa stuff, so I got her a gift certificate and some fancy skincare. Dad needed a new jacket. Kayla wanted a specific necklace she'd bookmarked online, a custom piece from a jeweler up north. I'd ordered it months ahead. The same shop had once made something almost identical for my grandmother. I remember holding that box in my hand and thinking, maybe this year would feel different. Maybe I'd finally hear "thank you," without it being followed by, "Can you help me with one more thing?" Maybe the work would mean something. Maybe I'd be seen. I placed the necklace under the tree with the others, labeled everything neatly. Then I cleaned up the ribbons and tape, made myself some tea, and sat on the couch. The house was quiet that night. Peaceful. I didn't know it at the time, but it was the last moment I'd ever spend in that house without questioning my place in it. Kayla turned 18 that spring. Denise threw a party in the backyard with string lights, a charcuterie spread, and a rented speaker system that blasted music until midnight. I came home late from a work trip and found the driveway full of cars I didn't recognize. No one had mentioned anything about a party. I walked around back and saw about 30 people laughing, drinking, posing for pictures near a balloon arch. Denise waved when she saw me. "We didn't want to bother you, figured you'd be too tired," she said. Kayla didn't even look up. I left my suitcase by the stairs and helped refill the ice bucket anyway. After that, things shifted. Kayla used to at least acknowledge me in passing, a nod, a quick thanks when I grabbed something from the store. That stopped. I'd come home and find her packages piled on the porch. I'd bring them in, set them near the stairs, and she'd take them without a word. One time I asked if she could make sure the front door was locked at night, since she was often the last one in. She stared at me for a second, then said, "Why do you care? It's not like anything here is yours." I laughed a little. Thought she was joking. Denise wasn't much better. She used to include me in group messages, updates about family dinners, church events, weekend plans. Then one week, I came home on a Sunday afternoon and saw 3 place settings in the sink. I asked Dad if they'd gone out. He said they'd tried the new Italian place near the mall. "Didn't you see the messages?" he asked. I checked my phone. Nothing. It kept happening. They'd leave for brunch and come back with shopping bags and takeout containers. I was never invited. One Saturday, I caught Denise whispering something to Kayla when I came downstairs. They both stopped talking as soon as I entered the room. Dad noticed, I think, but he didn't say much. Any time I brought it up, he shrugged. Kayla's just growing up. She's moody. Let her be. One night, I walked into the living room and saw Kayla wearing something familiar. It was a silk scarf, deep blue with hand-stitched trim. My grandmother used to wear it every Sunday. After she passed, I'd kept it folded in tissue paper, in the bottom drawer of the hallway chest. I hadn't touched it in years. Where did you get that? I asked. Kayla looked down at it like she barely remembered putting it on. Dunno, she said. It was in the drawer. I looked at Denise. She was flipping through a magazine. She looks better in it anyway, she said without glancing up. I didn't respond, just turned and walked back to my room. Later that night, I went through the chest. A few other things were gone too. An old bracelet, a silver hairpin, a birthday card my mum had written to me years ago. I didn't bring it up again. I already knew what the answer would be. Around that time, my travel for work started picking up again. I'd be gone 2 or 3 days at a time, visiting distribution centers or attending supplier meetings out of state. Dad used to call me during those trips, just to check in, hear how things were going. That stopped. I'd text when I landed, no response. I'd come home and find the mail still in the box, the garbage not taken out, laundry piled in the washer. Once, I mentioned that the power bill had jumped significantly. Denise said Kayla was using space heaters in her room. Her circulation's not great, she said. You wouldn't understand. You're always out of town. I paid it anyway. I always did. But something about the house started to feel wrong. I couldn't explain it exactly. It wasn't one thing. It was 100 little things. The way they left dinner dishes for me to clean up. The way Denise sighed whenever I walked into a room. The way Kayla used my conditioner, my towel, my Bluetooth speaker, and acted like I was the one intruding. One weekend I stayed home and tried to make breakfast for everyone. I used to do that once a month. Eggs, pancakes, coffee. It was the one time we all sat together. But that morning, they all left before I finished the first batch. Kayla had plans. Denise said she'd already eaten. Dad just looked uncomfortable. I stood there at the stove, flipping pancakes for no one. I told myself not to overthink it. People grow apart. Schedules get busy. But every time I tried to connect, to ask a question, start a conversation, it felt like I was being tolerated, not welcomed. Like I was a tenant who overstayed their lease. There was one day in early December that still sticks out. I was off work and decided to deep clean the hallway closet. I found an envelope tucked behind a stack of towels. Inside was a printout of a bank statement. My bank. My name. I wasn't sure how it got there, but the balance was circled in red ink. At the bottom, in Denise's handwriting, it said, "No excuse not to help more." I sat on the floor holding that paper for a long time. That night, I brought it up, calmly. Just asked why it was there. Denise looked surprised for a second, then defensive. "You make more than the rest of us combined," she said. "All we're asking is that you stop hoarding it." "I already cover most of the bills," I said. "And we're grateful," she replied. "But maybe act like part of the family. Not just some investor watching us from the sidelines." I looked at Dad. He didn't say anything, just rubbed the back of his neck and went upstairs. That's when I realized I was on my own in that house. The week before Christmas, I came home to find a pile of shopping bags in the hallway. Sephora, Nordstrom, a boutique jewelry store downtown. Kayla was upstairs with the door shut, music playing. I glanced inside one of the bags and saw the necklace I'd ordered months ago. The one I'd picked out, the one I'd paid for. It wasn't wrapped. It wasn't under the tree with the others I'd set aside. It was in Kayla's room, already hanging from her mirror. I stood there for a moment, trying to breathe. I didn't say anything, didn't storm in, didn't raise my voice. I just picked up the gifts I had wrapped, mine, the ones from me to them, and placed them in a small box. Then I went to my room, closed the door, and locked it. Later that night, I got a group text. Denise said, "Christmas morning will start at 9. We'll do brunch after." No one said a word about the necklace, or about what they'd taken. They didn't have to. I woke up early on Christmas morning, like I always did. The house was quiet. It was still dark outside, and for a few minutes, it felt like it used to when I was little, before everything got complicated. I made coffee, set the table, and double-checked the gifts under the tree. Everything was in place. I'd wrapped them myself, days in advance. My handwriting was on every label. I'd even tied gold ribbons around the larger boxes, just to make it feel special. By 7:30, the others started waking up. Denise came down first, in a red velvet robe with a matching hair wrap. She nodded at me, barely. Kayla followed, yawning loudly, already scrolling through her phone. Dad came down last, still in his flannel pajamas, rubbing his eyes. We sat around the tree in the living room. Denise passed out the gifts, smiling like she'd planned the whole thing. She handed every box to Kayla. Every single one. The first time it happened, I thought maybe they'd made a mistake. The second time, I assumed mine had been set aside somewhere, but then it kept happening. One after another, Kayla opened sweaters, boots, perfume, and makeup palettes. She pulled out a pair of headphones I'd mentioned wanting months ago. I hadn't bought them for her. I looked closer at the tags. All of them said, "To Kayla." None of them said my name. Then she opened the necklace. It was wrapped in a navy blue box with a satin bow, exactly how the jeweler had sent it. I'd picked it out 3 months earlier. Same style my grandmother wore in every photo I had of her. Oval pendant, brushed silver, engraved with our initials. Kayla tore the ribbon, opened the lid, and gasped. "Oh my God, this is gorgeous," she said, holding it up to the light. "Who got me this?" Denise laughed. "Santa, obviously." Dad said, "It's beautiful on you." I sat there, waiting. No one looked at me. Eventually I asked, quietly, "Where are my gifts?" Denise blinked at me like I'd asked something strange. "We thought it made more sense to consolidate this year," she said. "Kayla needed a few things for her program, and you've already got everything you need." "She needs them more than you," Dad added, not unkindly. "Stop being selfish." I didn't respond. I just nodded once and looked away. Kayla was already onto the next box, tearing it open, laughing. I sat on the edge of the couch, hands folded, trying to stay still. I kept waiting for someone to break the silence, to hand me a single card, to say, "Just kidding," or "We saved yours for last." They didn't. 2 hours passed. I watched her open everything I had picked out. The scarf I'd found on my last work trip. The wireless speaker I'd used my employee discount to get. A cashmere sweater that I'd tried on myself before deciding to give it to her instead. At one point, she stood up and did a little spin in front of the mirror, holding the necklace up against her chest. "Ugh, it's so pretty," she said. "This totally makes up for last year." I didn't know what she meant by that. I didn't care. I got up slowly, walked into the kitchen, and poured myself another cup of coffee. My hands were shaking just enough that I had to hold the mug with both. From the hallway, I could still hear their voices, laughter, footsteps, paper tearing. I set the mug down, walked over to the key hook by the door, and took the house keys off the rack. Dad saw me as I slipped on my coat. "Where are you going?" he asked. I turned around, looked at him. "To my lawyer," I said. "This is my house now." Denise laughed like I was kidding. Kayla didn't look up. But Dad didn't laugh. He stood there, watching me, mouth slightly open. I didn't say anything else. I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. The air was cold, sharp, the kind of cold that wakes you up whether you want it to or not. I walked down the driveway, got in my car, and just sat there for a moment, breathing. Inside, I knew they were still opening boxes, still talking like nothing had changed. But something had. And this time, I wasn't going to pretend otherwise. I didn't go to my lawyer's office that morning. I drove around for a while instead. Past the old community centre, where I used to take art classes as a kid. Past the gas station where I got my first summer job. I didn't feel angry. I didn't cry. I just felt finished. Like something inside had reached the edge of a long hallway, and there was nowhere else to go. Eventually, I pulled back into the driveway and parked off to the side, where I knew they wouldn't see me from the living room. I sat there for a minute, letting the engine idle, then shut it off. The warmth disappeared almost immediately. I stayed anyway. I didn't want to go inside, but I had nowhere else to be. When I finally walked in, the house was quiet. Wrapping paper littered the floor. A few open boxes sat on the couch. Someone had started making brunch and abandoned it halfway through. Bacon grease still on the stove, flour on the counter, a mixing bowl filled with what looked like half-stirred batter. No one noticed I was back. I went to my room, shut the door, and didn't come out for the rest of the day. I changed out of the sweater I'd picked for the morning, folded it neatly, and put it back in the drawer, sat on the edge of the bed for a while, then lay down without bothering to pull back the sheets. I texted a friend, Laura, someone I used to work with, before she moved to another city. I hadn't talked to her in months, but she'd always had a way of seeing things clearly. I told her, "They gave all my gifts to Kayla, even the necklace." She replied a few minutes later, "I'm sorry. That's disgusting." Then, "You okay?" I stared at the screen for a while, trying to figure out how to answer. Eventually I typed, "I think I'm finally done." That night, I couldn't sleep. I walked around the block 3 times. It was cold, but not bitter. The streets were mostly empty, just a few porch lights on, the occasional dog barking in the distance. Every house I passed looked warm, settled. I kept wondering if the people inside had any idea what kind of day I'd had. Probably not. When I came back in, the lights were off in the hallway. My door creaked when I closed it, but no one stirred. I lay awake for a long time, staring at the ceiling, not replaying what had happened, but going further back. Years of moments I'd brushed aside because they didn't seem worth making noise over. The family dinner where Kayla rolled her eyes when I said something about work, and Dad didn't correct her. The time Denise borrowed $200 for emergency dental work and never paid it back. The afternoon I came home from a business trip and found that they'd hosted a BBQ without telling me, and used my serving trays, my wine glasses, my patio heater. It wasn't one betrayal, it was a pattern. And the necklace was just the most obvious version of something I'd let slide too many times. I thought about the money. Over the past few years, I'd paid off exactly 82, zero of the mortgage. Not a rough estimate, not a ballpark figure. I kept a spreadsheet. Every transfer, every invoice, every contractor I'd hired for repairs. I wasn't obsessive. I just liked knowing where things stood. I'd paid for a new roof, updated the kitchen plumbing, replaced the aging HVAC system. Every time something broke or wore out, I took care of it. Not because anyone asked me to, because I thought that's what family does. When Dad asked to add my name to the deed, it wasn't a conversation. It was a statement. He told me it would help with taxes and protect the house if anything happened. I agreed. It made sense. I never thought I'd use that ownership for leverage. I wasn't interested in control. Until now. Because now I was being told, with a straight face, that I didn't matter. That my presence was optional. That I was doing fine. So I should sit there and watch while they erased me from my own home. The part that stuck with me wasn't the gifts. It wasn't even the necklace. It was the look on Dad's face when he said, "Stop being selfish." I kept seeing that moment over and over. Not because it hurt, but because it confirmed everything I hadn't wanted to believe. He didn't see me anymore. Not really. I was a resource, a convenience, a buffer, not a daughter. I didn't know what I wanted in that moment. I didn't have some grand plan, but I knew I couldn't keep playing along. I couldn't sit at their table one more time, smiling politely while they helped themselves to everything I'd built. That kind of silence eats away at you. It makes you smaller, slowly, until one day you forget what it was like to be seen at all. So before I went to bed, I opened my laptop and messaged my lawyer. Her name's Maria. We'd worked together once before when I refinanced the house. I typed, "Hi Maria, hope you're still available. I'd like to execute the property transfer we discussed. Next week, if possible." She replied an hour later, even though it was late. "Absolutely. I'll pull the documents in the morning." I closed my computer, turned off the light, and lay back on the bed. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt still, and for the first time in a long time, I felt sure. I got up before anyone else. It was still dark, but I didn't need light to move around the room. I'd lived in that house long enough to know where everything was without thinking. I showered, dressed, and folded a few clothes into a small overnight bag. Nothing dramatic, just enough to be gone for a few days while things settled. I wasn't running away. I just didn't want to be in the house once the paperwork started moving. In the kitchen, the coffee maker had already started its cycle, programmed the night before like always. The sound of it filled the silence while I stood by the door. The key hook hung just above the counter. 5 keys, 2 for the front door, 1 for the shed, 1 for the side gate, 1 for the garage. I took the front door key, left the rest. That's when Denise walked in. She looked half awake, hair pinned up, robe pulled tight across her chest. She paused when she saw the bag at my feet. "What are you doing?" she asked. I didn't look at her. I reached for my coat. Dad walked in a second later, holding his phone like he'd been reading something. He saw me, stopped mid-step. "Where are you going?" he said. I zipped up my coat. "To my lawyer." Denise tilted her head. "Why?" I didn't answer right away. I slipped the key into my pocket, adjusted the strap on my bag. Then I said, "This is my house now." The silence was sharp. Denise blinked once, then again, like she hadn't processed the words. Dad's mouth opened slightly. "What are you talking about?" I turned toward them, calmly. "I'm executing the transfer. The deed lists both of us, and I've contributed over $80,000 to the house in the last 4 years. The taxes are in my name. The renovations I paid for are documented. This is my property. I'm taking control of it." Denise stepped forward. "You can't just..." "What? Kick us out?" "I didn't say that," I replied. "But you'll be hearing from my lawyer. She'll walk you through the next steps." Dad's voice came louder this time. "This is your family. What are you doing?" What I should have done a long time ago. Denise folded her arms. "You're being petty. Over Christmas gifts?" I didn't flinch. "No. Over years of being used, of being ignored, of being treated like I don't matter in the house I paid to keep standing." She scoffed. "After everything we've done for you?" I almost laughed. "Like what?" Dad raised his voice. "We took care of you. We gave you a home." I looked him in the eye. "No, I gave you one. You didn't even buy the new furnace. I did. You didn't pay off the second lien. I did. And when your credit score tanked, who refinanced under their name? Me." He didn't respond. Denise tried again. You're not thinking clearly. I'm thinking more clearly than ever, I said. They kept talking, guilt-tripping, bargaining, trying to find the version of me who wouldn't follow through, the version who'd back down if they pushed hard enough. I let them talk. Then I picked up my bag. You made your choices, I said, opening the door. Now I'm making mine. I didn't slam it shut. I didn't make a scene. I just walked down the porch steps, got into my car, and drove away. That afternoon, Maria called to confirm the documents were ready for delivery. The formal notice would go out by certified mail the following morning. It would outline the timeline for transfer of control, with a 30-day window for them to respond or vacate. She said I didn't have to be there when it arrived. I told her I wouldn't be. I checked into a short-term rental across town. It was quiet, small, mostly used by traveling nurses. The Wi-Fi was spotty, and the fridge made a weird buzzing noise every 10 minutes, but I didn't care. It was neutral ground. No one knew where I was. For the first time in years, I didn't have to clean up after anyone. I didn't have to ask who left the lights on or why the utility bill had spiked again. I didn't hear slamming doors or passive-aggressive sighs or Kayla's music through the wall. I sat on the bed with my laptop and read through the legal documents twice. Everything was clean, tight, unambiguous. Maria had included a personal note. I'm proud of you for doing this. That night, I ate dinner alone. Microwave pasta and a glass of cheap wine. I went to bed early. Slept through the night for the first time in months. The next morning, Denise called. I let it go to voicemail. Then Dad. Then Kayla. From a blocked number. I didn't listen to any of them. I forwarded the voicemails to Maria in case she needed a record. By the end of the week, the first letter had been received and signed for. Denise sent a long email accusing me of betrayal, greed, selfishness, and emotional damage. She ended it with, I hope you're happy with what you've done. I forwarded it too. Maria replied, standard reaction. They'll get more aggressive before they accept it. I believed her. What surprised me was how quickly Kayla started posting online. Screenshots made their way to me through mutual friends. Her version of the story painted me as a bitter, jealous stepsister who had stolen her childhood home out of spite. She left out the part where I paid for her trip to Europe, or the part where I funded most of her last semester of college. I didn't respond, I didn't post anything, I didn't correct the record. There was nothing left to say. Denise tried one last time, called Maria's office directly, and claimed she had legal rights to the property. Maria asked if she had receipts. She didn't. When I finally saw Dad again, it wasn't planned. 2 weeks after the documents went out, I stopped by the house early in the morning with Maria and a locksmith, just to change the locks and do a walkthrough. Legally, we were allowed. Maria had notified them in writing. The 30-day grace period was voluntary. They hadn't responded. Dad was in the kitchen when we walked in. He didn't yell. He didn't argue. He just looked tired. You really went through with it, he said. I did, I said. He nodded. You always were stubborn. No, I said. I just finally stopped being quiet. We didn't talk after that. He left, without incident. The locksmith changed the locks, handed me the new keys, and left. Maria stayed behind to take photos and finalize her report. I stood in the living room for a long time, looking around at the space I used to call home. It didn't feel like mine yet. Not fully, but it also didn't feel like theirs anymore. And that was enough. The formal eviction took 6 weeks. Maria handled all the paperwork. Every deadline, every communication, every notice went through her office. She said it would be cleaner that way, and she was right. I didn't speak to them directly once the process started. Everything went in writing. No room for emotion. No room for spin. They stayed quiet the first 2 weeks. I think they were in shock. Then the calls started again, mostly from Dad, Voicemails, texts, a few emails. Always measured. Always just short of an apology. We don't have anywhere else to go. Can't we work something out? She didn't mean it. I didn't respond. Denise tried once too, sent a text that said, "You've made your point. Now stop." That was it. No greeting, no explanation, just that. I ignored it. Kayla didn't say anything directly, but I saw what she posted online. Pictures of the house with captions like, "Goodbye to the only home I ever knew." Some people have no heart. Friends of hers messaged me, asking what happened. I didn't answer. Let them believe whatever they wanted. By week 3, Maria received a counterproposal. Dad wanted a 6-month extension, said they needed time to figure out next steps. We declined. Gave them 30 more days, which was already generous. Maria said most clients wouldn't have offered that. I said I wasn't doing it for them. I just wanted things to end quietly. By week 5, the tone changed. The messages got colder. Denise started locking her bedroom door when she left. Kayla stopped acknowledging me entirely if we passed in the driveway. One afternoon, I came by with Maria for a scheduled inspection, and Denise walked straight past me without a word, sunglasses on indoors. She bumped into my shoulder but didn't flinch. That day, Kayla called me evil. Just loud enough for me to hear. I didn't turn around. Dad was the last to crack. He waited until the night before they were supposed to be out. I came by with a moving checklist and found him standing in the living room, surrounded by half-packed boxes. The lights were off except for the hallway lamp. He asked me if we could talk. I said no, but I stood there anyway. He said he was sorry things had gotten out of hand. Said he never meant for it to go this far. I listened. He said he'd made mistakes. I nodded. Then he asked if I'd consider stopping the process. Just pausing. Not reversing. Just giving them a little more time. I told him it was too late for that. He didn't argue. Just sat down on the armrest of the couch and said, "I never thought you'd actually go through with it." I said, "I know." Then I walked out. They moved out the next morning. No note, no goodbye, just an empty driveway and a pile of trash bags stacked by the curb. I let myself in with the new key. The place smelled like old candles and takeout containers. Kayla's room was half empty. She'd left a few nail polish bottles on the windowsill and a poster pinned to the closet door. Denise's room was cleaner, but she'd taken one of the towel sets I'd bought and left the cabinet doors open like it was a message. I didn't reply. I unpacked my bag in silence, put fresh sheets on the bed, took a long shower and ran the dishwasher twice. Then I made a grocery list, wiped down the counters, and turned on the heat. The air felt still, like the house didn't know what to do with the quiet. I didn't celebrate. There was nothing triumphant about it. But that night, I slept in the middle of the bed for the first time in years. The next few weeks were strange. I wasn't used to having the place to myself. The quiet was comforting. But it took getting used to. I didn't leave the TV on like I used to. I didn't make extra portions when I cooked. I stopped waiting for footsteps in the hallway. I started painting the walls. Replaced a few broken tiles in the bathroom. Scheduled a deep cleaning service. Little things. Nothing extravagant. Just mine. I hired a contractor to fix the porch. Another one to repair the fence. Slowly, the house started to look like something I chose instead of something I inherited. I didn't tell anyone. Didn't post about it. Didn't update my status or share photos. But I slept better. I heard through a mutual acquaintance, someone who used to go to the same gym as Denise, that they were staying with her sister across town. A 2-bedroom apartment with peeling paint and a noisy upstairs neighbor. Apparently, they were behind on rent by the second month. Kayla dropped out of her nursing program. No explanation. Just stopped showing up. Her Instagram went quiet after that. For someone who used to post every day, it felt loud. I didn't gloat. There wasn't any satisfaction in their struggle. Just distance, and relief. I started hosting small dinners, just a friend or two at a time. We'd sit in the kitchen, open a bottle of wine, talk about work or books or nothing at all. No one asked questions. No one brought up what happened. They didn't have to. One night, Laura came over. She looked around the place and said, "It feels lighter in here." I nodded. "It's yours now," she said. I didn't respond right away. Then I said, "Yeah, I think it is." It was almost a full year later when I heard from him again. An email. Short, quiet, no subject line, just a few paragraphs, sent around noon on a Tuesday. He said he hoped I was doing well, that he'd driven past the house recently and noticed the new porch looked good. He mentioned seeing my car in the driveway and how it made him pause for a second, how familiar and unfamiliar it all felt. Then he said the part that made me stop reading for a moment. "I miss you." No explanations, no excuses, just that. I didn't respond right away. I let it sit for a day, then two. Not out of anger. I just wanted to be sure. I reread it 3 times before I typed anything back. "Thanks for the message. I'm doing okay. Hope you are too." That was it. I didn't invite anything else. I just opened the door, a crack. He replied a few hours later and asked if I'd be open to coffee sometime. Just him. No one else. I said yes. We met the following weekend at a small cafe near the library I used to work at. Neutral territory. Public, comfortable. I got there first, ordered tea, and sat by the window. He walked in 10 minutes later, looking smaller than I remembered. A little thinner, maybe. Older, but also more tentative. Like someone stepping into a room they used to own but no longer recognized. He smiled when he saw me. I nodded back. We didn't hug. The conversation stayed light at first. He talked about work. He'd picked up some hours helping a friend manage a warehouse. Said it wasn't exciting, but it paid the bills. He mentioned Kayla had started online classes again. No detail, no stories, just facts. I listened without commenting. It wasn't the time for that. Eventually, he paused, set down his coffee, took a breath. "I was wrong," he said. I didn't say anything, just let him continue. "I didn't see it," he went on. "What was happening? How much you were doing? I thought you were fine because you didn't complain. I figured, if you weren't saying anything, it must not have been that bad." I nodded once. "I know that's not good enough," he added, "but I am sorry. It wasn't perfect, but it was sincere." I told him the truth, that it wasn't just about Christmas, that it had been building for years, that the gifts were just the last straw, not the first one. He didn't argue, just nodded. "I thought we were family," he said, "but I think I treated you more like a safety net." "You did," I said. So did they. There was a long silence after that. Neither of us tried to fill it. Eventually I said, "If we're going to have contact again, it needs to be clear." He agreed. "No Denise," I said. "No Kayla. And no money." He looked surprised for a second, then nodded again. "Okay," I added. "If you ever need help, I'd rather you just say it directly. But I'm not going to be the solution anymore. I'm not the backup plan." "I get it," he said. "I don't hate you," I added. "I just can't go back to how it was." "I wouldn't ask you to." That was the most honest conversation we'd had in years. After that, we kept things simple. A birthday card, a quick call on holidays, lunch every few months. There was no grand reconciliation, just 2 people trying to rebuild something smaller, quieter, and more truthful. He never brought up Denise again, never asked if I'd reconsider. He knew better. And I never asked where they ended up. I didn't want to know. He came over once to see the renovations. I gave him a short tour, pointed out the new countertops and the refinished floors. He said it looked good, said the place felt more like mine now. I said, "That's because it is." He smiled at that. "Yeah," he said, "it really is." We didn't linger. He left after an hour, but that was enough. It wasn't the same as it used to be, and that was fine. I wasn't trying to recover what we lost. I just wanted something clear, something with boundaries, something I could stand in without losing myself. Rebuilding didn't mean forgetting. It meant redefining, and that's exactly what we did. It's been a little over 2 years since that Christmas morning. The house is quieter now, but not in the way it used to be. It's the kind of quiet that feels earned, intentional. The walls don't echo anymore. I filled the space with things that reflect me, small, steady changes that make it feel like home. I redid the kitchen last spring, tore out the laminate counters and replaced them with something warmer, something real. The backsplash is hand-cut tile I picked up myself at a warehouse outside town. Took 3 weekends to install. I watched videos, asked questions, made mistakes, and fixed them. When it was done, I stood in the middle of the room and thought, this is mine. Not because I paid for it, not because it was handed down, but because I made it what it is. The living room has new curtains, lighter ones that let in more sun. I moved the couch to face the window, not the TV. That felt important somehow, like I was choosing to look outward instead of zoning out. I host people sometimes, not big parties, just dinners with friends, people I trust, people who don't take up space like they're entitled to it. We sit around the table with good food, music low, shoes off. I keep extra blankets on the back of the chairs. No one tries to dominate the conversation. Everyone brings something, even if it's just a story. I don't have to perform in my own home anymore. That alone feels like a luxury. Christmas is different now too. I host something small every year. No tree piled high with gifts. Just a few wrapped things on the coffee table, things that matter. A book someone mentioned 6 months ago. A scarf hand-knitted by a friend's aunt. Candles. Tea. Things you actually use. The first year I did it, Laura brought over a pie and said, "It feels like this is what holidays were supposed to be." I just nodded. I still have the necklace. I got it back before Kayla left. It wasn't dramatic. She was packing the last of her things, muttering about how unfair everything was. I walked into her room, pointed to the mirror, and said, "That's mine." She didn't argue, just rolled her eyes and unhooked it, let it drop into my palm without a word, like it meant nothing to her. Maybe it never did, but it meant something to me. I don't wear it every day. It's not flashy. Most people don't notice it. But when I do put it on, I remember what it came from. My grandmother wasn't rich. She didn't have much to pass down. But she wore that necklace every Sunday. She said it made her feel like herself. Said when the world got noisy, she'd reach up, touch it, and remember who she was before everyone else had a say. I didn't understand that back then. Now I do. Because there were years when I lost track of who I was, when I let the noise in, when I said yes to things that chipped away at me, quietly, gradually, until one day I was sitting on a couch watching someone else unwrap the pieces of my life like they were entitled to them. That doesn't happen anymore. I don't explain myself the same way. I don't make room for people who only show up to take, and I don't confuse silence with strength. Sometimes speaking up is the stronger thing. And sometimes walking away is the clearest answer you can give. People still ask what happened. Not directly, but in the sideways way people do when they know part of a story and are trying to fill in the blanks. I just say, it was overdue, and I leave it at that. Because the truth is, it wasn't just about one holiday, or one necklace, or one moment of betrayal. It was about finally seeing the full picture and deciding not to be erased from it. Dad and I still talk. here and there. He comes by for coffee every few months. We don't talk about the past anymore. We don't talk about Denise or Kayla. We talk about work, weather, books. He asks about the house, and I tell him what I'm fixing next. It's surface level, but it's stable. That's enough for me. I don't know where Denise is now. I heard they moved states. Someone said Kayla started over, maybe in Arizona. I don't keep tabs. That part of my life feels sealed off, like a room I've closed the door on. I don't hate them. I just don't carry them anymore. What I carry now are different things. The feel of morning light on the new kitchen tile. The sound of quiet laughter from friends who stay to help with dishes. The weight of the necklace against my collarbone when I need a reminder. My grandmother believed I was worth something. And now, I do too. And that's how I went from being the invisible one in my own home to finally standing my ground. Have you ever been overlooked or taken for granted by the people closest to you? What was your breaking point, and what did you do after? Drop your story in the comments. I read every one. And if you've ever had to choose yourself, even when it meant walking away from family, hit like, share this video, and subscribe for more real stories about taking your power back.